So that little boy of 13 years of age, his aim was to find, first of all, himself, but all his creative skills, and to be there fronting that panto with all my other colleagues as that day and go, where did this come from? And how did this happen? When you look back and think back, Maureen Potter, Jimmy O'Dea, all those great people who were there, who set everything in place, set the wheels in motion. And now it's a different chapter.
I wanted to start by talking about where we first met. I was travelling through Africa, through Kenya, volunteering over there. And I had no internet for 3 months, which was amazing. No mobile phones, which was amazing. At the end of my journey, I landed back in places that had internet and had phone coverage. And I had a message on my phone by Joe Conlon, who asked me to take part in a show that was going to be on in the Gaiety Theatre in aid of Temple Street Children's Hospital. I turned up and I had this fantastic time rehearsing this piece, and then I arrived on the night and the place was packed. Not only was every seat sold in the place, but every industry professional, everybody off TV, everybody was there to take part in that concert. And there was one man standing in the wings, almost prayerful, praying that everything went well. And that was you, who had brought all these people together in aid of Temple Street Children's Hospital. So what I want to know is, how did you get to be that guy who could get everybody in Ireland in the entertainment industry to come together on one night? So I know you won't be able to answer that because that you're too modest and you're too humble, but take me back nonetheless to where it all began. Let's go right back to the beginning.
Thank you for your kind words to start off with, and it's just after knocking me slightly because it's just after bringing back some lovely memories, okay? And I'll get back to that in a minute. But it would have started in school. And when I think back, there were no musical theatre colleges. There was very little of that happening at the time. So one whose scholastic adventures, for the better word of it, I wasn't great at that end. But when it came to music and drama and theatre, I was great at that. Now, from a scholastic point of view, I did my best, but at that time, I'd say I would have been challenged in many ways, and there would have been a title for it, whatever. When you look at now the way schooling is different and for the better. But at that time, there was nothing there. It was under the banner of the Christian Brothers, which was very challenging. And I can only speak for myself, and it wasn't great. It really wasn't. But how did I get out of that? I don't know. But what kept me alive were things like the drama teacher, the dancing teacher, Irish dancing teacher, the music, and that's where it started in school. And when I look at what school offers young children now and teenagers, both in junior level and higher level, is that outlet of music and dancing and extracurricular that are brought into the school. But I think it's nearly part of the curriculum now in schools. And I think it should be, because it's very important for children who might not necessarily be, as what they say, as bright. And it's not being bright, because you can be bright in many ways. You don't have to be scholastic, and your brightness cannot be necessarily in English, geography, maths. It could be in other creative skills like home economics, drawing, which lead to set designing, costume designing, all that. And where I was blessed that I was able to sing and dance, and that was the start of it in school for me.
As well as school, did you say I was able to sing, I was able to dance? Did that come from anything at home?
None.
No?
None, because so I'm talking about the early 50s, where there was one wage, one mother, home, looked after 5 of us, and it was very challenging for her. And when I think back at that, I think she was just the most amazing woman. And although there was not an amount of, say, financial incomings, right? We still got loads out of that one wage. How they did it is beyond me. But there wasn't things like you're going to dancing, you're going to sing, all those extra, as children do now, which is great. But there were stuff that I did go to. I went to start the accordion over in Parnell Square. Or when it came to quavers and crotchets and going, I'm not the brightest spark, and oh, Janie. So I sort of went, I think I'll move on to the next thing, as children do, you know. But just like, there's another waste of a few bob, you know. And other people's parents see that nowadays. But things like that, there was nothing like that in my family. There was no sort of creative bent. We were all very different. There was 5 of us, 2 sets of twins and an older boy at the time. But even when I did the school shows, my parents were there to support me. They came, they saw, I conquered, and we moved on, you know.
Didn't make too much of a fuss.
No, it never was. And I think at an early stage, I wouldn't have wanted it. And in those days as well, you didn't get, you were great. We love you. We think you're... That wasn't around. And in later life, I find that sometimes challenging when I think about it, but that's the way it was.
It was the way it was. Yeah. But I bet you had no doubt that you were loved. And
come here. Like, and I've no qualms about saying I'm adopted, and my twin brother were adopted. And we were adopted into a house that cared, that loved, that nurtured. Those 3 elements: cared, love, and nurtured. Nothing else. No materialism. There was a house. The fridge was never empty. The cooker was always on the boil. The oven was... I don't know how she did it. And she was an amazing woman. And my father was an amazing man who got up, went to work, and that's how it was. And you wanted for nothing more.
You say you put on shows and you sang and everything in school, but give me a bit more about that. Like, what was that like? Was it once a year? Was it once a week?
So that was once a year. And then the choir, Noel Pearson, producer at the time, a fantastic producer and a lovely man to work for. He was doing Joseph of the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and he was looking for a choir. He'd already had done it in the Olympia Theatre with some choir there and wanted something different and new and that. The producers came to the school, asked for a choir. A brother there in charge got choir A and choir B. And at that time, I barely got a note that was so important. Reach that note and you're in. My voice was starting to break. So it just got there. And that was the start of my professional career, because we were introduced into Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat with Tony Kenny leading, Des Smith, Jim from the Dubliners, the late Kerr O'Doherty. And as a young kid at 13, standing on the Gaiety stage, oh my God, to me that was a revelation, right? So what we did at the beginning of the show, we'd walk through the parterre, doing the yous and the yaws, walk straight across to the front, 3 groups of 3 and 3. Tony sang off stage. There was a big lighting effect, and the coach just was there and just sort of went into the sky and disappeared, and we sung. We walked up stage, left to our podium, stood there for the entire show, and to look out into I can still see that. There's loads of things I can't see, but that is a memory that has stuck with me as a young boy. This is what I want. So there was no aisle there at the Gaiety at the time. Seats. It was in a state of disrepair. Now, when I say disrepair, it needed a bit of a lick and a wash and a bit of paint, but it was still live theatre. The houses were full. Oh, I'm on stage with all these big stars in my eyes, but I had died and gone to heaven, and it hasn't changed. Yeah.
But yet there was a whole choir of kids. Yeah. Not every one of them went on to do what you did. So tell me then, how did you move on after that?
So that's a great question. Out of them all, I was the only one that continued. Now, Paul Monaghan was in the other choir. I stand to be corrected here, but he was, I think. He was in choir A, and I think Adam Lawler was there. That's how I started. So, and then after that, tried to continue my education with great difficulty. It would have been the Christian Brothers, I'll be upfront and honest. They were the issue, did and what they said, and the leather strap and the vilification of I might have been slightly different, as I would say, light on my loafers, you know. Like, I didn't have a problem with it. They did. It wasn't discussed, it wasn't brought up, your sexuality. But that never stopped me. For someone who was so young, who never had that scholastic bent, but in the back of my mind for a young kid, I could see a creative bent, a future. And I had this strange thing of self-belief, not cocky or not arrogant, but going, I'm going to get here. I'm going to get out of this. I'm going to enjoy this. And that drive was a self-belief. Okay, they're not very nice to me in many ways, but how am I going to get out of this? You have to keep plodding along because there's light at the end of the tunnel. Now, for someone who wasn't allegedly very bright at the time, I couldn't understand how I could see that light. It got to about 14 or 15 where my career was taken off professionally. Still in the choir, doing really well. They're on tour. I'm turning 16, 17, 18, and I'm now leaving school, much to the dismay of my parents. But I was being offered professional work from a lady called Mavis Ascot. She was a choreographer and director. And at the age of 18, the Gaiety Theatre invited me in to appear in Little Red Riding Hood with Maureen Potter. So I'm in the office of Fred O'Donovan at Eamon Andrews Studios, which was at the top of Harcourt Street, and they ran the Gaiety at the time. And I was learning to be a chef as well in Cottlebrew Street and doing some of my work, my practical work in Saks Hotel, Moorhampton Road. So I remember sitting at a desk with him. I was a titch, still am, and trying to explain to him, well, I work under this. So, well, we'll work around you. And they worked around me. And so did the hotel. So I'm always very grateful to Matt Dowling, Sean O'Brien and Paddy Pender. They were the chefs in charge of me and part of my training. And a man called Joe O'Rock, who was in charge of Cottlebrew Street. And his now daughter is that wonderful soprano, Tara O'Rock. So, and every time I see her and her name going, Joe O'Rock, he was terrible kind to me. And so were those three guys. So they worked their shifts around me. Okay, you're on earlies. And I would do early breakfasts, do mise en place preparation for lunches, and I'd go to the Gaiety. So where it's a little bit harder now, okay, it was very easy for me to get called to do TV work, theatre work. And I learned on the job. I learned from great people. And I'm very grateful to that. But then I went to Veronica Dunn in the College of Music. And she was trying to gear me towards classical music. I couldn't spell classical. Jeez, Mac, don't mind trying to sight read, which I found really difficult. And at that time, she would have had loads of people like Terry Lawler, Andrew Murphy, Rebecca Smith. Oh my God, quality singers, Grace Canirons. There were loads of people came from that college. And how I met them was through Noel Pearson's productions of Pirates of Penzance, HMS Pinafore. But these were brought in and going, oh, and the quality of their work, oh sweet Lord, it was top notch. Sopranos and altos and tenors and basses, Andrew Murphy's bass line and the late Joe Corbett. And we were in the middle of these going, oh God. And you'd sit down in rehearsals and they'd know all that because they could sight read. And we were going, pick it up, notation and earring and all that. Watching those people and their training, second to none. And that's where they brought the level of the productions up. And working with those people now who've all gone gone out there to do great things, just great things.
And you've gone out there to do great things too, but that classical aspect of singing, you didn't take to it as much?
No, I didn't. And I tell you why. Ronnie Dunn, and I hadn't got the money for class. I would pay her every week, right? Here's my envelope. It's okay, lovey. And she was doing great. Her and the late Paul Deegan as well. She was trying, and I was, this is not for me. I'm going down the musical theatre route. Oh, but lovey, you'll ruin your voice and that. But what I learned from her, I sort of brought forward with me in the early stages. And then working with the likes of Joe Corbett and Rebecca and watching them, how the diaphragm works and the larynx and the vocal cords. And I just thought, oh my God, how Jeannie Mac. And I just held on to that bit of knowledge. I wasn't in a college. I wasn't in a camper. I'm going to hold on to that. And I've done that for quite a lot of my years. Yeah.
Learned on the job.
Yeah.
Learned on the job.
Yeah.
So you've kind of brought me up now, I think, to we're about 17, and you'd done some of the Irish musicals like Pirates of Penzance, Joseph, and HMS Pinafore.
I'm now 21, and I'm in Annie in the Gaiety Theatre. And Annie, at that time, was the start of musical theatre in Dublin and in Ireland, I think, because the Gaiety Theatre, I think they co-produced with the company, and they brought a gentleman over called Jerry Tebbett to direct it from the West End. And Graham Ripley was the musical director. And these were people of note. And it was all trucks on, trucks off, fly stuff in, fly stuff out, big staircase. And there was Maureen Potter, Godfrey James playing the leads. And Jacintha White, that was the start of Jacintha's career. The late Anne Bushnell was wonderful in it. And that went for months and months and months. And I stand also to be corrected on this. I think there was no panto that year because it just filled. It was constantly full. And after that, musical theatre started to grow and grow. I was in that for, I think, 2 or 3 years. Then Noel Pearson did Pirates of Penzance, Bill Whelan's new orchestrations, John Kavanagh, Anita Reeves, Alan Devlin. And I've a great admiration for John Kavanagh because I've worked with him in loads of stuff. And working with him and watching his craft. And the late Anita Reeves. There was one year in the Gaiety Panto, she sent me a lovely bouquet of flowers and a handwritten note. And she was very complimentary in her words and admiration of what I was doing. And thinking, I was a little boy years ago on stage with her as an ugly sister, and Eamon Morrissey and Olivia Tracy as Cinderella. And she's now sending me notes. To get something like that from your peers. And that's something I'm very grateful of that I've received over the years till recently going, oh my God, where's this come from? And they're the people that I learned from. During that time, I'm working with the RTU Concert Orchestra under the guidance of Gareth Hudson. And he had brought me in to do some musical theatre shows with special guests, and I was one of those guests. I was doing either fronting or BVs in the concert hall, the National Concert Hall, and RTE doing music of the night shows, musical theatre shows.
To be broadcast on
To
television.
be broadcasted to the nation. And they were fantastic shows. And Yvette Halley, my agent at the time, said to me, there's auditions coming up in London for the West End for Les Mis. I'm putting you forward. And I went, oh, but that was never in my psyche, in my vision to go to the West End. Oh, okay. Oh, right. So, and Yvette was great. She was, now you're going, and I won't use expletives, and you've done loads, and no, you have loads of, I went, oh, right. And I arrived to the Palace Theatre in London on stage. It was huge. The floor, the cobbled stones, all that. So they're in the auditorium. And I remember thinking there was a mark on stage. Could you take a mark? Yeah, right. And I go, they're not going to hear me. Jeez, like there was no amplification. So I decided I'll move forward. So, okay, let's take a punt on this. So I did 2 songs, and they asked my age. I went, "Oh, can you sing that song once more?" "Oh, who's your singing teacher?" I went, Paul Deegan. "And what's your top note?" I said, "I don't know." First time, I have to admit, didn't know the note was. Said, "Can we just get another?" They were going, da. And they asked me a question. I said, "Why did you move forward?" "I was afraid you mightn't hear me because it's a bit far back." And a few weeks later, I get a call to be offered a 6 to a 12-month contract. And what they'd offered was ensemble and to play the role of the bishop. Now, my West End was Dublin at the time. I'm doing theatre work. I'm doing TV work. I'm working with the orchestra. I'm loving where I am at this. I don't really. So to tell my agent, no, Yvette Halley was none too pleased. I said, "No, I'm going to decline this contract." "But I'm out to do this." And they're the choices we make. But I've no regret in that choice.
Is it because you love Ireland and Dublin so much? Or?
I was loving where I was in my life. I hadn't got the gra. I was doing some great things. And most importantly, I was happy in myself. I'd sort of found myself starting to deal with my sexuality at that time. Okay, getting there. So all the things are starting to line up. So I'd no gra to go over there.
To change things because you were content and finding a
Absolutely.
contentment and a happiness here.
Yes.
You say you've no regrets, but I am wondering about the amount of work that's available in Ireland, in Dublin. Were you sustained in what you had got to do here?
Very much so. That's a great point. So at that time, I was very much sustained, taking into account, so I didn't have those utility bills, all those outgoings that we would have now. I'm living at home. I'm making a contribution to the home. I was living my best life. I was working constantly. So my mother was, when there was a landline, this man rang from RTE, Mavis Ascot rang, and so I'd get in for work and there'd be lists and ring them. And I was talking to, "Where are you, Mum?" "Yeah, God, they're very nice, son." They are nice. They're just normal people. There was all that, And I was able to sustain myself. And later on in life, in my late 20s, able to move into a relationship and starting to find all that. And that was great. And that was a huge learning curve. So I'm not dealing with being vilified by people who are in a higher position, and I'm starting to find myself, find me. Was that a good time for my mum? Not really, in hindsight. She was quite protective of me because of where I was going. And oh God, so there was all that. I think she was more concerned about how I would cope going into a relationship, how I would cope with the public. And at that time, being a gay man, being late 20s, you were looking over your shoulder, which was a bloody disgrace. Going into a gay bar where you should be at rest and at peace, going, yeah, have it, going, oh God, if someone came into that bar that you knew, and you go, I personally would go into it. I just want the ground to open up and swallow me. Oh my God, oh God. That was a dreadful time. That was a horrendous time.
RTE, when they made your documentary, what I noticed was that when you went back to school and went into one of the classrooms, there was a pride flag hanging on the wall of the classroom in this school that you'd gone to with the Christian Brothers and everything else. So what's that like to go back and see the world so changed in actually what I would say a very short amount of time?
To shoot that and to look around, God, haven't we and the school system and our country come such a long way for the better? I had huge trust in these two producers. They were young, they were very inventive, but the only reason I agreed to do that documentary, that it would be honest and open, even with some shots in my house, which I would be very private about, because close that door, there's nothing to do with my job. And I did all that. But the scariest part of it was going back to school. My stomach went into a roll. And there were certain smells still there. These sounds come back to you and you see it. God, there was a very frightened little boy in the middle of all that. Yeah, and challenged little boy. And when I look at young people nowadays who have sexual issues and coming to terms with sexual issues, the support they get and the love and the support they get that I didn't get from my peers in school, the educational system. That didn't stop me, right? But it was very challenging.
Did that time shape you in any kind of positive way or any kind of negative way? Do you think you would have ended up in the same place no matter what?
No, my sexuality issues didn't shape me. The creative industry shaped me. I was comfortable in that community because I was accepted. Society didn't accept me, and my peers didn't accept me. So when I went in there, I was accepted. I was so comfortable.
It was a safe space.
Oh, such a safe space. I didn't have to answer to anyone. And even when I got older, in my late 20s and all that, I was quite difficult for me to accept my sexuality and most importantly, accept me.
Yes.
Just find me. And where at this stage of my life, when I turned 50, I found Joe Conlon. And I found Joe Conlon because it was a huge turning point in my life. I'd lost my mother. She died 3 months maybe before I turned 50, September. For some strange reason or whatever, I just started to find myself and was so comfortable in my own skin. I was able to look in the mirror going, I accept me. I am who I am, what I am. If no one likes that, that's fine. That's not your problem. So to sit here and talk about this very openly, that wasn't Joe Conlon 35, 40 years ago, because it was very challenging. Now it's more accepting of me.
And that's a hell of a lot easier to do when society improves as well, and everything around you is a little bit more improved as well.
I think there's a huge problem in society at the moment with people not accepting themselves, not being happy with themselves. I would consider myself a listener, and people who might be challenged and going, do you want to meet for coffee? Let's have a... And I always put it out to them, are you happy with yourself? And the majority of those people will say no. And that's where the crux of the problem is. I think once you're happy in yourself, stop looking for happiness within your peer group, outside your peer group. Stop looking for validation and acceptance. Once you accept you and your inner self and your inner being, you look at that mirror and are you okay? Are you okay?
Do you think there's anything happening in society at the moment that's contributing to that? I mean, I would hazard a guess, for example, that social media has its perils. For example, people may be putting out a perfect image of themselves all the time. And
I think that's a fait accompli at the moment. I think that's part of our society. I think as a man of 66 years of age, like I go, I don't want that. I don't need that. The next generation are looking at people. Hi, we're online. We've got new nails, and my face just got a bit of a nip and a tuck. And when children in school, in junior school, primary school, are looking at products for their face, and all the names have to get the name, then there is an issue. But I tell you what, I am very proactive about is my arts community and what's going on out there. I'll share that more so.
Shining a light on all the work
Big
that's
time.
going on.
Because if I'm on stage, I'm sharing that production. I will go to productions. Yes. If I go to a production with Navan Musical Society, I will share that. Because they're giving entertainment out within their community, as loads of societies will. And I'll go, this is great, I've paid it, and support. But you have to be careful how you share and how much you share.
you did a stint with Panto for a good number of years, possibly over 30 years or something like that. And then there's a 14-year Gaiety thing. So were they on the Gaiety, or did you go to the Olympia, or what did you do?
So I was with Em and Andrew Studios, Maureen Potter, and that era for about 5 years. And then Jerry Sinnott at the Olympia invited me in to play Wishy Washy opposite Twink. And then the late Brian Flynn, the late great Brian Flynn,
Who wrote Michael Collins'
who wrote the
musical
wonderful
drama?
piece of Michael Collins. What a talented, gifted man. He would be responsible for me playing the Dame. Brian rang me, said, "Come here, boss. I'd love you to audition for me for Anthem Productions," which was Alan Hughes and Carl Broderick. "Would you play the father?" I said, "Yeah, I'll go down." I played opposite Brenda Donoghue, who was a riot. And oh my God. And the following year, they were doing Cinderella. And he came to me the last night and he said, "Would you play an ugly sister next year in Cinderella?" I said, "What?" I said, "I'm not saying yes now, like it's the last night." So, "But would you?" I said, "I would if you're directing it." He said, "I will be." He said, "Pencil me in and we'll see." Because you don't, as an artist, you don't like book yourself 12 months in advance. You don't know what's going to happen. But very grateful for the opportunity. So I ended up doing it, which was great. And I played opposite Val Fitzpatrick. And I created the role of, as written in the script, Buffy. And I loved that character. So as an actor, whether it's a play, a musical, pantomime, there's a name of that role. It's up to you to create that within the direction and vision of the director. Brian Flynn could not have been nicer to me. He was fantastic. And so was Val Fitzpatrick. So to play opposite someone of their knowledge and career, just a great, great man, Lord be good to him. I then was brought on for another 10 years playing Buffy. And so my Panto Dame career was because of Brian Flynn. And I loved Buffy. I loved her. I played 10 years of her. I decided to move on for that. I love change. I think change is very important. So I took a year out where I did a show in the Mill Theatre for Christmas called Fluffy's Xmas Factor, written by Shay Healy. And during that year, I was indirectly contacted by the Gaiety. "Would you be interested in coming in the following year?" And that got me there for 14 years.
You then became a different
A
character.
different character. So Buffy would never have worked.
Okay.
So as an actor, that is that character in that vein, in the Tivoli, in Liberty Hall, the lovely Liberty Hall, the Tivoli, right? That's where she belonged.
Yeah.
I found it hard for the first 2 years in the Gaiety to find that dame, that niche, to struggle. Where are we going, Darren? What are we doing here? I followed in the footsteps of Maureen Potter, Jimmy O'Dea, Twink, and it was great. I loved it. And I think as a jobbing actor, you don't take that for granted. I'm not talking about the financial reward. And as a jobbing actor, you have to live, and I'm talking about carrying that role.
Yeah. I'm fascinated at how you talked about Buffy belong to different pantos, because it's something I've noticed, which is that certain pantos, it's like they take on their own identity. They have their own audience. They're in a certain place. They maybe have different writers and different people at the helm, and they all seem to have their own nuances and their own kind of identities, and they have their own tones and that type of thing. Is there a particular formula to making a good panto, or is it important that they're all different?
I'd preface this by saying every theatre around Christmas time, whether it's in the capital, no matter around our country, have their own audiences. I was at the Gay Theatre, which I go to a lot, a couple of months ago, sitting beside this lady, and we struck up a conversation. And she goes, "Are you Joe Connell?" I'm going, "I am." "Oh my God, it was all that here. And you come here a lot?" I said, "I do. I come here quite a lot to see the stuff that they produce. And the Gaiety have a beautiful piece of work on at the moment, and it was a play." And I said, would you go there to see that? And she says, oh, no, no. And she was quite strong about, no, I only come here. I would go to the Abbey or go to the Project, or I wouldn't go to see a play in the Gaiety. And I remember walking home. God, there's a great insight that she won't go there. The same, going back to your question earlier on about the same niche people will go to the Helix, do great pantos, the Cork Opera House. But I noticed as well, through the years of interviews, meeting the public, they said, we always start at the Gaiety for our Christmas tradition. So we have a tradition where we'll go in with the family. There could be 10, it could be huge. We'll meet early, we'll go for a bite to eat. And sometimes this could be Granny and Grandad's treat, right? Mm. And I said, oh, God, that's a great tradition. But what do you do? And think, we go to our local panto.
Yes.
I was delighted to hear that. Because out of those local pantos, Ciarán, there could be one person, male, female, child. I was that soldier. In the back of Ballydehob, doesn't matter. That's still their Gaiety stage, their Olympia stage, their whatever. And out of those local pantos, one person will start that journey. So when I was a young lad, early 20s, I was in a panto in the Cork Opera House as Buttons with these two great people. I still hold stuff that I learned from, was Billa O'Connell and Paddy Comfort. And they were the dames. Oh my God, their comic timing was ingenious. And I introduced a thing called Tanks a Thousand. I was on stage with my first panto going back with Val Fitzpatrick. And I just came out one night and I said, oh, Tanks a Thousand. And it just came out, Val Fitzpatrick. He creased and got to the stage. He was uncontrollable. And the audience. So I went, and I had to get him up. We continued. So I kept that turn of phrase, all right? And it just took off. And that came from Billa O'Connell. It was either him or Paddy. If I was to correct this, I think Paddy said it in the inimitable, wonderful Cork accent. And I was never mine, and it will never be mine. It was his, and it just came out. It is a plagiarism. In my book, it wasn't plagiarism. It was just, it happened, right? And I did let them know. But I could never have used that in the Gaiety. It didn't belong there.
I think putting on panto, though, is very, very difficult, because what people have to do is they kind of have to come up with a smash hit every year. They have to come up with a script and characters and costumes and lights and sets and everything else, and keep it fresh and keep it current and everything else. What advice would you give to somebody who was trying to maybe come up with a panto or write one or produce one or whatever?
I would give guidance rather than advice. I think the musical choice is very important. I think it's so prevalent in society now with kids, big profilers, tunes, songs. The music element was really strong last year. The content, live orchestra, oh God, it was just beautiful. And I noticed that. I went, oh God, the music is great this year. Has it been every other year? No, not really. No, just, oh God, but this needs to be brought up a bit. And because the opening of Act 2 last year was golden. The wonderful David Whelan didn't have to sing it because the kids were just like, they were on it. They were just on it.
Yeah.
Also, a bit of slapstick. That's gone by the wayside a bit. I love a bit of slapstick, a bit of knockover, pies in the face, a bit of funny. We need to laugh more. And there's always a baddie. So there's a broad spectrum of singing, dancing, comedy, and a bit of love. Just those elements.
I did a panto years ago, actually, and it was written by Maeve Inglesby, who
Oh,
you've probably
yeah.
come across because she did a lot of the Gaiety.
Maeve, yeah.
Yeah. And I remember her saying to me, it's really important that you tell the story.
It's all right.
And I actually thought that was a lovely piece of advice. Do you agree with that? Because sometimes I go around and I kind of think this is highly entertaining, but I know this story for over 40 years and I'm not recognising it particularly.
Yeah. And particularly with young children. You can't fool children. They say it as it is, right? So if it is the Three Bears, if it is Goldilocks, and if it something really modern storyline, you need to keep that precise, clear, loads of clarity. Don't get lost in the plot. And Maeve was right. Because with young children, you have to keep them attentive. Keep them awake. They lose interest very fast. Need to go to the wee again. Can I have more popcorn? And don't overcomplicate it. Don't overcomplicate the story. Where did he go? Why is he in the plot? So at the top of the panto in the Gaiety last year, I did a small narration and it set it up and it was beautiful and then just took off. But you can still go wrong with a panto if you're not clear. Don't try to be too clever.
Do you think the Dame kind of anchors a panto? And I'm also wondering, do you think there is a magic formula to creating a Dame?
I think she's the glue that holds the whole plot together, right? She doesn't necessarily have to be on all the time, bending the piece itself, but that when she comes on, she's a bundle of energy. We're not asking that Dame to be, we know you're classically trained, we know you're drama trained. It's not about that. It's a different skill set to be the best you can and give the best you can. But that energy level has to be up there. And she's not vulgar. We don't bring vulgarity into it. Double entendres. There's no place, I think, in panto because it's a children's show and it should be kept out of that. You'll get away with one or two for the mammies and daddies. But at saying that, clear cut, she should be, every time she comes on, a bundle of energy. And I think that's the secret to her. When she comes on, there's a secureness with her, with the audience going, oh, here she is, we're grand now. We are in safe hands because the Dame is on stage. She'll make it better.
Yeah, Mammy is here.
Yes, yeah.
And she's like, in your own tradition as a Dame, did you find yourself ad-libbing and working off the audience, or did the settings you found yourself in be heavily scripted? Because I know that some production companies can be quite strict about going off script and others really encourage.
Look, there's two ways to that. So in the Gaiety, I was slightly restricted to that formulae, all right, because that's how it was. And not time, we'd be able to throw it out. And where me as an actor, I was, okay, I might be able to throw something in there. But there's time constraints and so forth. So let's get on with the plot. But there's another side to looking at that when, if you have not knowledge of how to contain that, it can get out of hand and it can go too far. It's called timing. Timing, you just have to know your timing with that Dame, that she's able to go and row it back and to learn that it's not working. If it's not working, whoops, no, these aren't off. Keep going. And I've seen it before where it's not working and they're trying to draw, and then the audience, you've now lost your audience. You can't bring them back, because what happens is the focus has gone on the person who didn't like it. And you've slightly vilified them or embarrassed them, or they're not comfortable with this. That's where knowledge kicks in. Not expertise, knowledge of how that Dame works. And they're going, oh no, it's not working. Keep going. Keep going.
I'm no doubt that you have met over your time drag artists and drag queens and that type of thing. Are they cousins to Dames? Are they the same thing? Is it completely different? I mean, I acknowledge as well that every drag artist and every Dame are their own creation and their own artist. But is there kind of a crossover there, or is it totally different?
No. And why I say that with the utmost respect, a Dame is a character in a pantomime. She's a character in a story. Drag artists, we have the best here in our city. And it's getting better. It was lovely to see that Pride Festival. Like, hello, hands up, well done. But to answer your question, no, she does not belong in that formula. And who am I to say she does? Have they tried? I don't. But in my humble opinion, no, she's a character within the storyline.
Yes. Yes, yes. She is who she is
She is
in
who
that
she is.
story.
Yes.
In
Yeah.
that story. In that story. You mentioned that you like change. And you made a big change this year. And you decided to wrap up and finish up with your damehood.
That just didn't happen last year. That happened about 2.5 years ago. And I just felt, yeah, where are we going? And crossroads. So I had a chat with my manager in there. I let him know this is how I'm feeling. He was he was very funny because it was the second half where, strange enough, I didn't have time out and he was passing. I said, Leo, have you a few minutes? He said, yeah, come on in. So I said, I need to listen to the tannoy. And I casually just said, I'm thinking about this. And he goes, what? Get over yourself. Like, I said, no, I am. So, listen to my cue. And there was always Mr. Conlon stand by and all that. And I said, I need to have a chat tomorrow with you about this. Joe, stop. And I was called somebody. I said, I have to go. So during the break, he said to me, we're having our teas and chats. He sat beside me. I said, are you joking about that? I said, no, I'm not. I said, oh, Jesus. And he walked away. So the following week, I had a proper meeting with him to inform him that I am considering this and it's probably going to happen, but I need to let you know that. So he said, we're doing Peter Pan next year. He said, so it'll be the following year. I said, are you sure? I said, no, but give me a bit of time out. He gave me a bit of time out. And I said, I'm compiling an email to my producer. Sent it. The minute I sent that, the minute I pressed that send button, that was the start of change. I said at the top of this, that change is important. I'm responsible for my own destiny. I didn't want to be there another 5 years having missed out on. I should have tried. Because when I finished that panto in January, I went straight into a film on the Monday morning with, I'm going to name drop and I'm not good at it, with Brad Pitt.
Wow, name drop
So
away.
look,
Yes, well, rightfully so.
I will confess I was the head tree, but I was going to hell you, Brad. I wasn't going to miss that opportunity. So I thought, this is part of my change, me and Brad.
You and Brad, the new era.
I went grand and I went from that into that film shoot, into the documentary press calls for 2 weeks and into something else, which I can't talk about because it's going to happen and stuff like that. So I haven't given myself time to stop. But what I learned over the last couple of months was you need to stop and give yourself time out to refresh, rejig your head. You can stop and recharge and revitalize. And if you stay in something too long, it gets stale. You get stale. You also get grumpy and get sort of... That's not me. I'm very proactive. I'm the eternal optimist. Like recently I was dropped from something that was nearly there. My agent and my team were looking after it. And I had to accept that graciously. Not good about it, but going, I'm not going to entertain that. That is not going to take up time and rent in my head. So I went, and my agent was fairly like, Joe, I know, move on. Just move on. I've moved on. I've forgotten about it. And that's part of life. That happens to everyone. And it wasn't good the way it was done and all that. And a bit of manners, a bit of civility. I wasn't good about that end of it, but I accepted it and move on.
And you talk about having a zest for life, and I think that comes across really,
I have a
really
huge
strongly.
zest for life.
And you go on the, what's it called? I knew it earlier on, the Panto push.
Hashtag Panto Pump.
Panto Pump.
Yeah.
That's it. Hashtag Panto Pump.
That's just getting up and running around the city. I live in the city and I love where I live. I love Dublin City. I'm a proud Dublin man. But I'm up at the crack of dawn. The birds are singing, believe it or not. And I'm jogging around. Hashtag Panto Pump. I'm going to hold on to it.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm holding on to it.
Absolutely. And you told us your age earlier on, and it's incredulous because you're fit and young and healthy looking and everything else.
I am
but
healthy.
it wasn't always plain sailing with that.
No, it wasn't. I was diagnosed with cancer. And it was a challenging time, a very challenging time. And I'm out the other side of it. I had a great oncology team, still visit them. At the beginning of it, for the first 2 or 3 years, it was hard. not going to say it wasn't. It was very challenging, and the scars are internal, they're not external. I carry them to this very day. I'm accepting of those scars because they're part of me and they're not going anywhere. During the treatment was funny some days because you get to know these people. Every day they're part of your life. I had 8 weeks of radium treatment, 5 days a week, and these are people I met and talked, and they went to see Coppers was on at the time. They all went to Coppers one night and all in the radiology departments going, Coppers was great, Joe. God, we loved it. And
Copper's the musical.
yeah, yes. And they, and I remember when I'm finishing up all those treatments, I go for a visit once a year to my team, the oncology team in Vincent's Private. But I remember when all that finished and all that treatment was finished, they continue that day, the following to someone else. And that continues and continues. My late mother died of cancer in the old Vincent's. And I remember when she was dying, looking across to that new Vincent's being built. Little did I know that I would be over there the next stint, going into the radiology, going upstairs to the team, because we don't know our paths in life. We just never know. And when I looked at that, I thought, oh my God. And I finished that journey, but the love they give, the care, those medical practitioners, the best in the world. And it was a challenging time, but I learned loads from it. And my health is great now.
Would you like to share some of what you learned? You said I learned loads from it.
When I was diagnosed by a urologist that we have to inform you, and sadly, that you've been diagnosed with cancer, my world crumbled for about a couple of hours, picked myself up and got, okay, I've no choice in the matter. And when I took on that journey, I learned a lot about humility and really what is important in life. And over the last 7 to 8 years, the changes I've made and all that, and I've learned a lot about myself through cancer. I knew I'd get out of through the other end through the medium of spirituality, going to a church and zenning out, meeting a wonderful man from Navan, County Meath called Joe Goff, who is a counsellor, a medium, a healer. He helped my journey. And that's one thing I'm very vocal about, is going to counsellors. They're there for a reason. I go to him once a year and visit and chat. And if I'm feeling a bit off, I'll ring him. Have you got an appointment? Yes. And I'm very proud to say that, because I think nowadays there's so much going on in our lives. We do need someone to talk to. Yeah.
You mentioned to Miriam McCallaghan that you're working on a play.
I did mention to Miriam about a play, and I'm actually working on it at the moment. It's about two women who made a decision that impacted me, and the decision that they made, one knows what's happened and the other doesn't. So this
is a fictional piece.
No.
Oh, this is
it's based on fact.
Oh, right.
It's fact.
Biographical.
Biographical.
Very
yes.
good. Very good. And will you be in it?
I will be in it.
Okay, right.
On my own.
Oh, it's a one-man play.
Sweet Jesus.
And you are playing the woman.
Oh, Jesus.
And probably everything else.
I am in it.
Ah.
Yeah. So it's getting there. I'm nearly there. It's going to happen next year. It'll be brought to the stage. But I'm working with another writer, to sort of a ghost writer, to just fine tune it for me and give his opinion, and
kind of like a dramaturg type thing.
Yes, absolutely, a dramaturg. And with my director, who is a lady, Belinda Murphy, and she has it, and it's something I'm very excited about. Go back to the very beginning of this chat, is those people who vilified me because they knew I was different. And so that's what I take such great pride in giving myself a little pat on the back, not a big one, just going, well done you. How did you get here? Because a lot of great people helped me along the way. I never did it on my own. and think back of support and guidance and get up off your arse. And
There's no sign of you slowing down
oh,
anyway.
Janie, enough credit union to clear. Don't we all? Yeah, and but I'm also very excited about the arts community, about what's going on, the freshness of new theatre, of new actors and actresses, and Oklahoma recently in the board, gosh, what Claire Toy did with that and stripped it back, and all that new talent of fresh singers and dancers and actors going. I'm so excited about that. So that's what I love about my industry of actors and creatives, and going, this is great, and yeah, a bit passionate about it, but delighted to see it's all fresh and new. Yeah.
So you're feeling optimistic.
Very much so. Yes, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, listen, thank you for sharing your story with us. It's been incredible to listen to it. It's been a real pleasure, and we're going to watch you with great curiosity for all the rest of the stuff that's coming your way in the future.
Thank you very much.